Everyone, welcome to our first ever, the Developing Young Athletes Network-Network Nation. Everybody knows me. I'm the host, David Edwards, now a face with a voice, right? Today, we bring on our show, our first ever, our first guest is a former Division I soccer player and founder of Alpha Girls Soccer Academy, host of the Alpha Girls Soccer Podcast, and author of the best-selling book, She the Competent. Our guest is widely regarded for her insights on competence and mindset by parents and coaches around the country. Let's give a warm Network Nation welcome to our guest today, Shay Haddo. Welcome to the show today, Shay.
Thank you, David. And you got my last name right. Usually when people pronounce it, they say it wrong. So kudos to you.
I kind of worked on it. Took the S off versus shadow. I took the S off pronunciation with Haddo, right? So I got it right. So there we go. I always start off with this, though. I always want to go with a backstory, an origin story. As a young girl, for fun, what did you like to do growing up?
My life was all about sports, soccer and basketball. Yep, soccer and basketball, getting my knees dirty, like honestly, just anything that I could go do outside with my brother, riding bikes. I was just an active kid, and sports was my life then, and it's never left my life, and it'll always be a part of my life.
I think that's great because a lot of us former athletes, it doesn't. Some things I used to be able to do, I wouldn't try again, but that the mind is still there. The body tells me elsewise, but the mindset still is there. So let's go through a little things here. So at 13 years old, you had an injury, right? An ACL, right? And you have surgery at 14. You get into high school, right? And when you're looking at that pivotal point continuing with sports, what was it that kept you going? What was it in your mind there that kept you going?
I honestly think it was my desire and my dreams to play college soccer. I was so close to quitting when I was like 15 years old, just because I wasn't confident. I didn't have the right mindset. I didn't have the tools. Had so much pressure put on me that it became more of a job for me other than something that I love to do. But I remember like the moment where I was like, well, I want to play college soccer. Like I can't give up on this dream. Mm-hmm. And so, I think that's what really kept me in it, was this long-term goal. Like, yes, the short-term, it's not awesome right now, but if I keep working, then I can achieve my long-term goal. And I'm so incredibly grateful that I did, because playing college soccer was definitely one of the best experiences I've ever had in my life.
And at that point, that pivotal point was where I always say with athletes is that you being injured, you mentioned some things with it. And the reason I'm going with this, everyone, I'm leading to something with this, is that when we look at that, sometimes where athletes are coming, I've had an injury too, I actually had a fractured tibia. Mm-hmm. And when you're trying to recover from a mental perspective, how important is it for coaches because you might have athletes that might have physical ability at that age, right? And so they're able to perform, but you might have those diamonds in the rough that at that age, you mentioned in your book, everyone get the book, it's great, we're gonna talk about that. But even with Michael Jordan, imagine if when he got cut, if he would have walked away from the game of basketball. How important is it for coaches at that point? From a mental perspective, athletes are going through a lot, and it doesn't mean that they're not talented. It might mean that from a biological standpoint, they haven't developed, or it might be a mental. You got to bring that out of them. How is it important for coaches to look at all athletes, not just the ones that are physically gifted at that time, but those that might develop later? And realistically, we want to develop every kid that we work with.
Yeah, I think that's one of the most important skill sets of a coach, is to really know your players on a personal level. Because like you said, you can't treat every athlete the same, because every athlete is going through different things, whether it's physically, whether it's mentally, whether they're going through things at home. You never know what an athlete is going through until you really get to know them on a deep level. And specific to injury, one of the most important things that kept me in the game is my coaches always kept me involved, even though I was hurt. So they would make sure I was always involved in the talks, involved in learning how to, run these specific plays that we were talking about, involved in coaching, involved in picking up balls. So they didn't just throw me off to the side and say, just go watch. So I think that was huge for me, is that my coaches really took me in and wanted me to continue to grow. They cared about my growth, even though I couldn't physically play.
Okay, and see, this is leading us into this. Tell us a little bit about your organizations, the Alpha Girls Soccer Academy, and then you're also a podcast host. So I see the speaker, the mic over there too. So I know how that is. Mine's, can you see it? I don't know.
No, I can see a little tiny bit of it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I started Alpha Girls Soccer Academy in 2017. So it's been about 3 years. And I started it really just because I wanted to help girls technically. So I wanted to help them become better soccer players. But my message has always been the same. My message has always been empowering female athletes to be strong, confident soccer players. That's how it started.
Okay.
And it started as just doing like soccer training. So individuals, groups, clinics. But it wasn't until this year that I really started to kind of shift and focus more so on the mental side of the game, because I realized that that is what girls are struggling with the most.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what girls aren't getting. Like it's easy to go out and find an awesome personal trainer or an awesome coach to help you technically, but it's not so easy to find a mentor and a coach to help you with the mental side of your game. So I saw the gap, and I knew it was something that I needed help with when I was that age. And I absolutely love, like, my favorite part of what I do is helping girls, coming on Zoom calls with girls, with teams, and helping them with, improving the mental side of their game, because it's so incredibly important.
I think it's the structured foundation, because without that belief system, you don't have it, right? So it's that pyramid you can't build tall as it is at the foundation, as big as it is. So let's go into this here. What I want to do is the book, everyone. Go get the book, like I said, She the Confident. We're going to go through some key areas there that are very important to development. I want to start out with the mindset. You talked about it. Give us your definition of the mindset. How important is that?
Yeah, so just like you said, it's the foundation. So when I teach girls, it's like you got the pyramid. Foundation of the pyramid is mindset, and then you build up from there. But without the right mindset, you can't do anything else, right? You have to start with that growth mindset. And so it's really about identifying, when do you have a growth mindset, when do you have a fixed mindset, right? And the difference is, a growth is obviously the belief that you can do and achieve anything you want with time and energy, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you have the fixed mindset, you're never going to be confident. You're never going to be able to change your inner voice. You're never going to be able to change your limiting beliefs. So that's why it's that foundation, because if you have a growth mindset, then there really is no limit to other areas of your life that you can grow in.
So if I'm a young athlete and I'm out there listening and saying, okay, that's great, but what can I do? What tip can you give me? If I'm a coach, like I know some kids on my team. What are some of the tips that you give us there?
Yeah, I like, my tips are very simple, very practical for kids.
Right.
So a few things, and this is in the book, is like writing out your daily wins. So every night before you go to bed, sit down, grab your notebook, your journal, and write out like 2 to 3 good things that you did today. So what are you proud of? And the reason why I like to do that, to help your mindset, is naturally as humans, we're more focused on the negative than we are the positive, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're harder on ourselves, and we think, oh, it was such a bad day because I failed a test or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
Even though those bad things happened, you may look at it as a bad day, but if you really sit down and think about it, you will always be able to find a few good things that happen in your day, a few good things that you can sit there and be proud of yourself for doing. So that's one thing, to write out your daily wins. And another thing is to just try something new that you've never tried before, because we've all learned how to walk, to talk, to write, to do whatever it is that we're doing. So when you try those new things, even if you think you can't do it, and you put the time in, you put the effort in, you'll prove to yourself that you can get better at something. And if you get better at one thing, you can get better at anything.
Right. And I think is that, you talked about like the consistency. I call it a needle point improvement. There's one thing, and you gradually, like on one of our episodes, we had the Karate Kid. I like that show because even the one with Will Smith's the most current one, where the jacket on, jacket off we used to use with young athletes, and everyone wants to scrimmage or play in a game, but it was those little things of building and developing confidence to get them to that next level that was important. And that leads me to this with you. When you talk about the participation preparation, the importance of that, let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think that gets overlooked as a confidence strategy, because I think it's almost too obvious, right? If you want to get better at something, the number one way to become more confident is to practice doing it, right? Practice breeds competence, right?
What did I say? Practice, participate. Sorry about that.
Practice. No, yeah, same thing, right?
Yeah.
So like whether it's, if you want to be more confident at, I'm going to use a soccer example. If you want to be more confident at juggling a soccer ball, go juggle a soccer ball, right? You're going to be more confident over time if you keep consistent. And the same thing is like more on the preparation side, is like, let's say you have a test or a speech, or you're doing something, a play. I don't know. It doesn't matter what it is, but if you prepare for that thing and you put in the work, you're going to be more confident when you actually do it. So I think sometimes that gets overlooked and it's like, ooh, that's these crazy hard strategies to become more confident, when really you should first start at just practicing.
And touching base on that with this is that when we talk about that, again, we're with that consistency that becomes a habit. How important is that? Because the belief system, because of that belief system out there, I don't care what you put in front of an athlete or anyone. This has nothing to do with sports. This is that part of everyone that's very important. Everyone always thinks, well, sports, can you see the correlation between the two? Because how many people that even listening that are adults have gone through this where, let's say something easy, what we're doing, talking on a podcast. Well, that inner voice is saying, well, people, they're going to make fun of me or they might this or that. And that inner voice, I'm kind of shifting gears around here, but I want to talk about the inner voice as it relates to that, because everyone realizes that inner voice will be with you for the rest of your life. Either you control it or it controls you. And the worst thing to do is go through life and not have, and the worst thing to do, and I've talked to some mentors that were older, is the regrets. Is regrets of what they could have done, worried about what others think. How important is that to change that inner voice?
It's incredibly important. Like you said, it's with you no matter what. That's one thing you can't escape is your own head, your own voice, right? So I like to kind of like a negative thought loop. So first you have your thoughts, your inner voice. That inner voice turns into your beliefs. And
Mm-hmm.
your beliefs turn into your actions and the things you do on a daily basis. So if you don't get your inner voice right, like if you have negative inner voice, then you're going to have those limiting beliefs. And then you're never going to go out and try to achieve new things because you're not going to believe that you can do it. But if you can learn how to identify your inner voice, the negative inner voice, and you can learn how to change it and question it, then you'll be able to flip your beliefs on the positive side where it empowers you to go out and achieve whatever you want to achieve.
Now, how does that tie into, I call it the I am state, the self-affirmation, our belief system? I always use the example, everyone with Muhammad Ali as a boxer, everyone looked at Ali saying, I am the greatest, but it wasn't that he was arrogant. It was that subliminal message he was telling himself that we should think of ourselves as perfected to the degree where we're not arrogant, but where we're striving to be the best that we can be. How important is that there? And some advice you could give some young athletes for that.
Yeah, that's one of the very first things that I teach after the mindset is like do affirmations. So it's always do your wins every morning, or sorry, your wins at night, your affirmations in the morning. And it can be very simple, like I am the greatest. I will play college soccer. I will become successful, right? But I think that these sometimes get a bad rap because it's like, well, how is that going to help me? Like that's
Right.
dumb. That's not going to help me, right? But the point of it is the more often you tell yourself these things, the more automatic it comes. Like our negative thoughts, they're already automatic. Our positive thoughts are not automatic. So if you can get in the habit of doing these affirmations, they're going to enter your awareness more often, and it's going to help you believe those things. So yes, it may seem like it's not going to help, but the more you do it, the more consistent you are. Consistency is everything in anything you do. The more consistent you are, the bigger effect it's going to have on your mindset and on your life.
And you had this in talking about the crabs in the barrel.
Yeah.
Always important. Always the pigeons and the eagles. Either you fly high or we can eat from the ground. What do you choose to fly with, right? And so, kind of go through that a little bit. How important is that right there? Because I can sit and tell myself that every day, but if I'm around that kind of mindset, we see it in business and we see it in life in general. I think that's why mastermind groups are so popular today. Is that you got to surround yourself with those like minds. Because if me and you are sitting here, you're telling me that you want to be at this level as a soccer player, and I do, but I don't see how. And I'm bringing you down. Not that you can't inspire me too, but how do you see that when you're working with young soccer players? How important is that? Can you see it? I know I do when I work with athletes. I see it enough. I see it enough, especially it doesn't matter what age they are either. It really doesn't.
Yeah, so like the crab story, if you're listening and you're not sure what he's talking about. So like if you were to put a bunch of crabs into a bucket, one of those crabs, like one of them's going to try to escape the bucket and be free, right? But as soon as that crab gets close to being successful, the other crabs are going to try to pull it down, pull it down, pull it down, because they don't want to see the other crab be successful. They're just going to keep tearing each other down so that they're all miserable. So it's the same thing with life. Like a lot of times, if you surround yourself with the wrong people, they can try to tear you down as you're getting close to your goals. And this is especially important for youth athletes because their peers and their friends have such a huge impact on the decisions they make and, you know, on their goals and their aspirations. So as young athletes, it's so important to take a look at your friends. And I know this is hard, but take a look at your friends and think which of these friends are actually helping me to reach my goals, are helping me to become a better person, and which of these friends are either hurting my mindset, hurting my confidence, or just putting out negative energy. Like if you have friends that are always talking bad behind other people's back, they probably shouldn't be in your friend group, right? And I know it's hard to say, go talk to your friends and cut your friend off if you really enjoy spending time with them. But I think it's just important to be aware. And a lot of this comes down to self-awareness, being aware of your thoughts, being aware of your friend group, and kind of actually looking at it, because it's something that I think adults need to do just as much, right? Is looking at your friend group and thinking, are these people really going to help me to where I want to go, right? And same thing with your role models. You don't look at role models that are not doing what you want to do. So your friends should have similar goals, similar values, like similar aspirations, because they're going to help build you up. They should help build you up to reach those.
Now, how important is that? How important is it having that role model, that mentor?
I think it's extremely important. It's like whether it's a mentor that you personally work with and you know, right? Like that's super powerful. Like that's what I do. Or if it's just someone that you can look up to on social media or on TV. For me, it was Mia Hamm, right? It was Mia Hamm, it was Brandy Chastain, it was those women, like they were my role models. And they are who really pushed me to go train on my own at home. Like I would watch them play and I'd be like, man, I want to be like them. So I'm going to go out and juggle the soccer ball, or I'm going to go play with my brother. Right. So whether it's someone that you personally know that personally coaches you and helps you, or whether it's just someone that you can find and look up to, whether it's a professional athlete, a collegiate athlete, a parent, whatever it is, find that role model that you can aspire to be like, and don't try to just be like them, try to be better than them.
Now, what about that? And I know this is something that probably they're thinking about right too, is that failure. I call it falling forward. I know Denzel, there was a speech he gave on falling forward that was great. We had on an episode dealing with failure. First of all, I don't believe there's a word as failure. I just think that's just progression and development is what it is. We're evolving. How should some tips you could give them there?
Yeah, kind of along with that, I think the only way you can really fail is by giving up.
Yeah.
And I'm a huge advocate of failing often, because the only way to learn and to grow and to really become the person you want to be is to fail. But the thing is at least for female athletes, that is the number one thing that they're afraid of, is failing. Like that's the thing that holds them back more than anything else, is their fear of failure, whether it's fear of disappointing themselves or fear of disappointing other people. And that kind of comes back to the friend thing and just really, you know, having the right people around you. But realize that yes, failing is not fun. It's okay to be upset after you fail, but it's important to like think about that failure in a way, in a growth mindset way, where instead of failing and giving up and not trying or whatever it is, you look at that failure, let your emotions, don't hide your emotions, it's fine. But then sit down and really think about, okay, what went wrong and what can I do better? Like, how can I move forward from this so that I do better next time? Right. So you just got to realize that failure is going to happen all around you. It's going to happen to the best, most successful, most talented people in the world. But that's why they are where they are, is because they failed, but they picked themselves up and kept going.
Yeah, I like the way you put it, because, you know, you look at anyone that's successful, they learn from those things we call failure, right? We learn to ride a bike by falling.
Yeah.
And if we don't fall, then we don't learn, right? Because it's like putting your hand on a fire. If I don't learn from that process, I can't evolve, I can't develop. And I think that's important. But I think you're right. I think athletes as a whole, I've seen it for years, and even us as adults still battle with that, because it's, well, if I take this risk, you know, what are the repercussions? Well, what are the repercussions if you stay where you are, right? And so what's bigger? And then I think that's where the why, the drive comes in versus the how in the individual. Now, I had a friend of mine was on the show. Actually, he called me a little bit ago here. And one thing he talked about as he's a pro scout. And one thing we talked about before, and I was on a show a while back here, was the importance of when we start talking about body language. How important is body language? I know one thing you talked about is recruiting. I'm gonna go into that, everybody. You got to get the book. But when we start talking about body language, you being a former athlete at the collegiate level and working with young athletes, how important is it? Because I think they don't realize that sometimes, is it says a lot.
Yeah, it's something that's very subtle, but like as a coach, if I'm on the field and say it's a tryout or some kind of selection process, I can pick out my team just by their body language.
Mm.
You can always tell a player that's there to work hard and they're there to improve, and then you can kind of see the player that doesn't really care, or they're just all about themselves and their egos in the way. Right. So I think that body language is very overlooked, but it's very important, but it's easy to fix, right? It's something
Hmm.
you have to be aware of, but it's easy to fix. So something as simple as like field specific stuff, which isn't in the book, is like being like on your toes and being ready and looking athletic, right? Instead of like, I always tell my girls, I hate this, is when they're in a drill or on the field and they're just flat footed. Like that's part of your body language,
Hmm.
right? And even like for soccer or even basketball is like your hand gestures, like how hard are you checking to the ball? How, like, what are you doing with your hands to let your teammates know that you want the ball, right? And then off the field as well, it's like your eye contact, your posture, like your stance. So I don't know if you're a Cristiano Ronaldo fan, but before he takes his free kicks, you Google Cristiano Ronaldo free kick, every single picture, he's got this wide stance. He's standing tall, like he looks like he's about to crush the goalkeeper, right? So it's like
Right.
that body language, it's like so powerful. And when you hold yourself in that way with those positive body language, then it really does affect your mind.
Hmm.
Like your mind will follow your body, but it goes the reverse too. Your body will follow your mind. So even if you're not confident, at least stand like you're confident, and then your mind will start to change a little bit based on how your body is.
Well, we were watching the family. We were watching a movie a while back where this guy he knew no martial arts, but he intimidated people by his confidence. Right? He's like, well, I haven't had to fight a lot because people think I know how to fight, but I don't because of my body language. Right? And so that's important. Now, this is something I just had on a episode, and this deals with injuries, and that's something our organization is big is functional movement and screening and injury prevention. A lot of athletes now with COVID and now dealing with the pandemic have been home a lot. Ask you a couple of questions as it relates to that. We know in soccer and certain sports with young female athletes, the ACL, right? And so when we look at an injury, and you had it, if you look now, I know me dealing with injury I had back my freshman year of high school, when I look hindsight, I always ask my older self, my younger self, if I could go back in time, what could have changed that outcome? If you look back saying that, even going through physical therapy, what you learned through the component of the collegiate level and dealing with the movement patterns and how to train for prevention, what advice could you give, or is anything that could have prevented those injuries?
Honestly, I mean, 12 and 13 is really early
Yeah.
to get injured. But even then, like I don't think we did any kind of even body weight strength exercise other than
Yeah.
push-ups
Right.
and stuff. We didn't do any kind of body weight strength exercises or stability exercises, honestly, until like middle of high school.
Right.
Right. And so I think even as young athletes, as a 10-year-old, whatever it is, there are things you can do to learn how to move your body in the right way. Right. And at that age, it's a lot more coordination oriented and that kind of stuff, but learning how to land properly,
Hmm.
learning how to sprint properly, learning how to stop, right? That's a reason why a lot of girls landing and stopping, why they tear their ACLs, because they can't absorb the force
Right.
of landing or stopping. So just like learning how to do those little movements and control your body, I think that would have potentially prevented it, right? There's no way to totally prevent injuries, but it can minimize the risk of it. So that at a young age, and then, high school kids should be getting stronger. They should be learning how to actually lift weights, barbells, kettlebells, dumbbells, whatever it is. But I think at that stage, it's like you have to start from square one, just like with your mindset. You have to learn how to move your body properly. You have to learn how to be coordinated and do those things before you pick up a barbell or before you pick up a dumbbell. So I think just educating yourself on or hiring a strength coach or something to where like they can help you learn how to become a better athlete so that you can stay healthier longer.
Is there any, especially with us, we talk about that body awareness and teaching physical literacy we do in the earlier ages when they're down at first grade level, kindergarten and so on.
Yeah.
Is there any type of exercise warm up that you would go to now to say, this is something that would be good for any young female athlete in soccer to do right now that we could recommend?
I mean, I don't think it has to be complicated. I think
Right.
just doing different, like not just running up and down and stretching. Like I see that way too often. Like perform actual movements that you're going to perform in a game. So
Mhm.
stop, starts, jumping, getting a little contact in with someone, warming up your hamstrings and your glutes, like because that's a lot of times what falls asleep is those muscles. So like doing the things that you're actually going to be doing in game as far as the movements go and just warming up those muscle groups so that they're awake and they're ready to go when you actually start playing.
Now, this is something that we really, and I know with our video series that we have now on our YouTube channel, is that it's important for any of you that are in coaching to start understanding that too, because I had a pro basketball player on shot that Olympians that's been on the show that have, the reason I'm saying at the level they're at is that I had a former professional female basketball player that didn't know the landing mechanics. She was saying it until later. I had an
Mhm.
Olympian that went to college as a major Division I school. They were teaching her movement with the Olympic lifts. If you're any coach out there at the younger ages, this is what I say. I think this is the time to get more professional development in those areas because, as you know, at the collegiate level, the further you go down the tier system, the more lack of it is, even the volunteer level. But there's so much information out there, like me and you are doing right now, that I wish it was available when I was younger,
Mhm.
but now it is. So I think it's important that coaches, you don't need to know kinesiology and movement from a PT standpoint, right, from functioning, but to know basic things, the landing, deceleration. I think going into the future is highly imperative. And sometimes everybody can't afford to hire a strength and conditioning coach
Mhm.
or personal trainer. But I think if you're going to coaching, you got to do that now. I think because these
Yeah.
athletes are playing so many sports. And let me ask this one question too. You play basketball and soccer. Looking at multi-sports, how did basketball help with soccer?
I
Or
think it
did?
just, I think it did. I think it made me a better athlete. I think it made me faster. I think it helped me to be able to jump higher, like with my more fast twitch, move. And I really am a fan of multi-sport athletes.
Good.
I am a really good, I love it. I think obviously it shouldn't be the same movement. So I think basketball and soccer are really good. Like soccer and cross country, maybe that's a lot of running, the same repetitive motions. But I think if you can find two sports that kind of do different things, it can be really good. Number one, just for like athletic development, but number two, for injury prevention and minimizing the risk of like overuse injuries.
Yeah, and I know with my both daughters, some of the girls, when I coached their basketball teams were young, a lot of the young ladies were soccer players too.
Mhm.
And also they ran some track in there. And some are graduating this year, but unfortunately what happened with COVID. Well, we reached that part of the show that we call the motivational moment. That's that part of the show where we want you to motivate, educate, inspire the listener. So imagine you've been invited to a sports banquet. And if you could give one key message to the audience, parents, coaches, and young athletes, what would that message be? Now you're at the mic ready to present. Congratulations and good luck.
Yeah, so we already talked about this, but this is my number one message that I want athletes and female athletes specifically to work on is you have to identify what your negative voice is telling you.
Mm.
You have to identify what it is. That is the first step. If you don't identify your negative voice, if you don't take the time to actually sit down and write down the things that you're telling yourself, you're never going to be able to change your negative voice. And if you have a negative voice, it's going to stay with you. It's going to haunt you for the rest of your life. So get it right now. Identify those thoughts. Once you have those negative thoughts written on a piece of paper, question those thoughts. So 99% of the time, our negative voices, our negative thoughts are just stories that we've made up in our head. They're not actually truth. So when you identify those and you question those thoughts as not truth, but as stories that are made up in your head, then you can go on to change those thoughts to empowering thoughts that are going to help you change your beliefs. And once you change your thoughts and you change your beliefs, the world is yours. There's nothing that can stop you. but it starts at square one. If you skip that step, if you don't get your mindset right, then you're not going to truly be able to be confident long-term, regardless of your external circumstances. So in today's world, there's not a lot we can control, but one of the things we can control and we do have power over is our own voice, our own thoughts, and our own actions. So get those things right and you're going to be good.
That's a great motivation moment. How can our audience reach you? On what social media platforms can they connect with you on?
Yep. So definitely. So social media, Instagram, you can find my personal page, Shay Haddo, just my name at Shay Haddo. The soccer page is at Alpha Girl Soccer. And then you can find me on Twitter as well at Shay Haddo. And then the website is alphagirlconfidence.com. So that's where you can find podcasts, blog, all the good stuff. So you can head to my website and find everything there as well.
Okay. And what about the book? Where can they get She the Confident, the book?
Yep. So you can get that on my website. It'll take you to Amazon, or you can just go to Amazon directly. And if you just type in She the Confident in the search bar, it'll come up there.
And thanks for coming, everyone. We'll also have this on the DYA Network.org on our site, all the information. Thanks for coming to our first video footage of the podcast, Network Nation. Thanks for coming today.
Thank you, David. I appreciate it.